Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed. So let's revisit and continue that conversation with Senator Bala. He joins us here this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain and Mopé, and then good morning, viewers. Yeah,
so in a bid to probably get things right in some quarters, the National Assembly say they're going to review the Constitution. So in that, two things. First is the question of having or changing to a parliamentary system of governance. But before that one, let's talk about this debate, seemingly unending debate about multi-level policing. Now, the president, governors had that conversation as to what do we do. So still at that conversation stage, because there are several stages before it actually takes perhaps a kind of shape or is actualized. Now, you're not new to this kind of conversation. You've been in the chambers yourself. What do you think about it? Is this a good way to go or not?
Ordinarily, yes. It's a good way to go. It will go a long way in solving partly the security challenges that we are facing as a nation. But the question again to ask is whether the political class has exhibited that level of discipline and patriotism that will guarantee a fair use of those institutions at state level.
Is that the condition precedent?
Yes,
so
it is.
At the moment, they are what they are, but we have a unitary police system. So do we have a fair police system right now?
You see, this conversation has been going on. It appears a lot of people have not taken time to understand properly what our forefathers wanted for this country. In drafting the 1960 and the 1966 Constitution, they had at the back of their mind to run a government that will be cost-effective for the nation so that we can quickly grasp with the challenges of getting independence newly. Unfortunately, it's not something, again, that I would like to discuss. We ran into where we ran into the 1966 coup. So when the subsequent constitutions were going to be drafted, those fears were taken into account. For example, the 1966 coup, what led to it, whatever it was taken into account. And then our framers of Constitution wanted a very strong, united Nigeria. And therefore, they kept everything on the table to address the fears of every section of this country. And that was why I have said, in the House of Representatives, those seats came about based on what they require, what they put as population and landmass. The idea was, as at the time of independence, the southern part of this country were far advanced educationally than the northern part of the country. And there was the need to bring the two to catch up for the purpose of developing a very strong, united Nigeria. And therefore, resources were to be allocated up north to take care of those challenges as quickly as possible, so that a very strong, united Nigeria can be built based on that pedestal. So that was the idea.
Okay. Well, what do you say to those who think that right there can be described as a huge chunk of the challenge we face in this country? Because if they interpret a strong and united Nigeria as though everybody must develop at the same pace, isn't that erroneous?
No, it wasn't that we must develop at the same pace. That was why I used the word for the North to catch up. That was the thinking, that the North could utilize those resources, put them into use, ensure that they were, inching towards leveling with the South, so that the contribution of every section of this country will be almost equal in developing the Nigeria that they wanted, our forefathers. Let me tell you, there has been a lot of conversation, and at times I sit down and I laugh, that the 1999 Constitution is not a people's constitution. That is bereft of people who don't know how constitutions come about. You see, The military, when they wanted to hand over power to civilians, they took into account what were the wishes of our forefathers. They wanted a strong Nigeria. They were, you see, so they said, okay, fine, go and put up a constitution where every section of this country is adequately protected. And that is how we came about 360 members of the House of Representatives. That's how we came about it. Now, after doing that, they came to the conclusion that more than 67% of this population of 360 people are from the north. And democracy being a recurrent suspicion whereby more than half the people must be right more than half the time. If any decision is to be taken on the floor of the House of Representatives, if these 67 are to come together and unite, then they will continue to overrun the southern part of the country. And they felt that was not the kind of thing that we wanted. That was how the idea of Senate came about, to build a federation where recognition is given to the fact that in as much as people want to be together in certain things, they equally want to be separate in certain things based on our cultural values. And these cultural values, again, have been re-evaluated based on the principle of cultural relativity and cultural universality. So what was it that universally brought the entire country together? On that, we agreed. What was it that kept us separate? Then we said, okay, how do we address that? Build states, so that at state level, those issues can be taken care of. And even inside the state, in recognition of the fact that we are a multi-religious, multilingual country, we can find in one local government, in one state, maybe more than 4, 5, 7 tribes. They say, okay, try to build local governments so that the federating units will responsibly perform their functions at that level, and then give their own contribution to the federal.
We hear you, Senator, but at the same time, we still do not have that kind of Nigeria that you speak about, because some regions have more states than all the others.
Yes.
So, and Nigeria hasn't broken up. So are you then saying that if some groups say they don't want this multi-level policy, which they call state police,
yes,
because some don't want it, that means others cannot have it?
No, that is not equally right democratically. Like I told you, when we talk about democracy, is the ability to give to everyone what he or she wishes to have based on his own strength. It will be very, very uncharitable, for example, for one section of the country to say we will not allow state police in another state where they are desirous of developing that based on their peculiarity. You understand? Like I have said, the most unfortunate thing is that we play politics with everything in this country. And that politics has succeeded in taking away some of the best brains that will have come together to take this country out of its present situation.
Okay. Pardon me to jump in again, but will there be anything wrong if the National Assembly looks at all of this and says, okay, you know what, we'll amend the laws. Whichever state feel they can fund state police, go ahead and have it.
That's the right thing to do. So that at each level of establishment of this state police, every state will determine when it feels it needs it and then establish it. For example, you can decide to say, look, I'm not interested. I will only rely on the federal police. But you cannot do that. The idea that state police is necessary is already on the table. And I will tell you why. Why are we having Omoteku or whatever? Why are we having the other one in Borno?
Almost every state has
and Banga and
security agencies,
and that has further complicated our security architecture, and that has further put us into security problems too in the country. I am not an advocate of bringing up groups of people who have no constitutional or legal authority to continue to bear arms and parade themselves in the public. I'm not that kind of person that will support that kind of thing. And no civilized society will allow that kind of thing. But we have seen them exist. And so at times, to our astonishment, yes, and to our astonishment, they are even being promoted by governors.
I am just a little curious. So what precisely is your stance right now? You've been a part of the National Assembly for years.
Yes.
And we've seen how this debate has gone. So what is your personal stance right now?
My personal stand is that whichever state that is desirous of establishing a state police and they have resources to establish it and give it legal backing to exist should be allowed to do so.
In other
I hope
words,
I'm clear enough.
Yeah, so in other words, the National Assembly should be making the moves and amending the Constitution in that direction.
They should what?
They should be amending the Constitution in that direction.
Yeah, but again, it's going to be subject to public hearing. So, again, public hearing, like I have said, will override
famous public hearing.
It's interesting that you add that caveat, because what we had received before was that the sentiment of the public was, generally in support of the creation of state police. It was seen that the problem had always been with the National Assembly.
I think I can enter a plea of not guilty on behalf of the National Assembly, and conveniently so.
As a comrade,
Ekweremadu did so much work on this issue when we were in the Senate. And if you remember, I was the one who put the bill on the reform of the Nigerian police before the Senate, on the 9th Senate, which couldn't go through, of course, for some reasons that unfortunately cannot be explained here. But later on, I'm happy that at least it came back to the 10th Senate. And
it is a good thing that you mentioned Senator Ekweremadu, because I also had the opportunity to interview him at the time when it was raging. And yes, he did confirm there was a lot of work done in the National Assembly. Still, it didn't scale through.
Yes.
But let me come back to, you've stated your stance, and I think that's fair enough. We'll wait to see what the 10th Assembly will do, in spite of all of the, the agreements now between the president and the governors. But let me ask you this because we also saw this, 60 lawmakers visiting major businessman, Alhaji Dantata in Kano. You're talking about bringing back a parliamentary system of government. You're talking about what our founding fathers wanted for Nigeria. It doesn't seem to have worked so far when we look at what we have. And the fact that there are still agitations here and there for a people's constitution. You might mean well for people, but if you don't carry them along, it might become a problem. So I want to take your stance on what you think of this proposal that will return to a parliamentary system of government.
You see, like I thought I have made myself clear on this matter. Let me again re-emphasize the fact that we started with parliamentary system in this country.
We did.
So those who are agitating for us to go back to that system should have gone again to ask us, what were those reasons that necessitated our migration from parliamentary to presidential? And I told you that it is the desire of the ethnic communities, ethnic nationalities in this country to be ably represented in the National Assembly. And look, in all democracies, except America and Nigeria, no democracy has vested the power of appropriation in the National Assembly, absolutely. Now, the reason is this. You are dividing the cake, the national cake, as they call it. I don't know, I can't remember. And every community wants to be there to be sure that it's divided in such a way that it is equitably shared and that he has his own share. If we have let that function to the president, and we are unfortunate to find a president who believes erroneously that those resources should be channeled towards, taking care of his region or state or whatever, and the National Assembly has no hand in it, then we will run into that problem. It is to avoid that situation that the framers of our constitution domicile the power of operation on the National Assembly and made it absolute that they can change, they can alter, they can do whatever. Now, let me tell you, a lot of people, I have seen lawyers, very senior lawyers, argue on television and everything and say, 1999 constitution is not a people's constitution. Let me tell you why it is. When the military were going, they brought the draft. It was debated. They promulgated it. That draft created the office of the president, created the offices of governors.
Was debated where?
Wait, it was debated on the Constituent Assembly. Nikki Toby was the one leading that issue. And then, after creation...
There was a Constitutional Assembly?
Yes.
There was a eve of 1999?
No, that was the review when 1979, I'm trying to say.
Of course, 1979.
Yeah, wait. Now, and then they said, okay, throw it to the public. We have created office of the president. We have created office of governors. We have created local government chairman. All the offices created by the constitution. And then we have created an institution to conduct election into these offices. When the time came for that institution to conduct election, not a single section of this country refused to partake in electing its chairman or governor or in participating in electing the president. At that stage, the people have accepted the constitution. That's the legal way to establish the how do I say, the acceptance of the constitution.
By reason of them not refusing to participate?
Exactly, by participating, sir. By participating, not by reason of not participating.
Well, Senator, I'm sure that there will be how will I put it now? There will be a debate, because what you have raised is actually a controversy. I mean, the fact because don't forget also
there is no controversy about this.
Just a moment, don't forget that people were also coming from a military era where they had learned to do as they're told. But I mean, let us move away from that. What I really want to focus on is this issue of parliamentary system of government. You've talked about how, we have a representation as it currently stands. We have senators, and it's for a reason of balance. I mean, that's why we only have 3 senators per state, no matter how small or how big.
Equality of states.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've talked about that, and you've also talked about the House of Reps, the representation.
And they may be bicameral.
Interestingly, the bicameral legislature can also be functional in the parliamentary system of government, can't it? I mean, as we've seen in Britain, where there is a House of Lords and a House of Commons.
Yes.
So that
setting is slightly different, with due respect. Slightly
perhaps
different.
It is, but people
in their evolution and establishment, it's slightly different. You see, let us not confuse these issues.
Yes,
let us look at.
Distinguish. The reason I'm bringing this up is that some people have said we can have a mishmash. We can adopt our own, because what we have seen since our independence and even since the return of democracy is that whoever determines or whoever wants to be president will have to have deep pockets. And at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like there is, will I say, sufficient engagement with the Nigerian people.
You know my thinking? My thinking is that any reasonable thinking about the constitution of this country, if it has become necessary to do so, should be to migrate away from the parliamentary, to migrate away from the presidential, and look for a homegrown constitution that takes into account our population and our ethnic, multi-religious configuration. That will be my argument. But you see, you have tried parliamentary system, it has failed. It has failed. Nobody can argue about that.
Did it fail or just changed it?
It failed. It failed. Let us not go into those issues that made the failure of that parliamentary system by opening wounds that have already been.
Isn't this current system failing? This current presidential system that is not delivering security, that is not delivering economic prosperity, isn't it failing?
Well, I don't know what criteria you are using to determine the failure or success of it. But let me tell you something. It is not failing because we do not have a constitution that guarantees its success. It is failing because the participants have not been disciplined enough to follow the constitution. Why will a governor take an oath of office that he will do justice to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will, that he will not allow his personal interest to affect his official decision, and every aspect of his is in total violation of this provision? So it's not about the constitution. It is about the participant, the discipline of the political class to be able to respect the constitution of the people.
My colleague in Lagos, Ayo, has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Markwe. It's actually in that same vein that I'd like to take you up on, Senator. The fact that, you talked about the participants being the #1 culprits. How then do we begin to reverse the trend?
Yes. Well, the way to reverse the trend is to hold them accountable.
How?
If a governor says, I, being the governor of Lagos State, for example, do solemnly swear that I will uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, that I will abide by the 3rd schedule of the Constitution, that I will not allow my personal interest to affect my official decision. And the next decision he takes is to take a university established by the state to his own backyard. Isn't that in breach? So we expected at that time the House of Assembly of that state to take action and say, look, Mr. Governor, you are in breach of the oath of your office, and therefore we are removing you from office. Fortunately for us, the Constitution didn't make provision for impeachment. What it made provision for is removal from office. So it's the participants. We all know. We cannot claim not to know that.
Is there not a role, Senator? My apologies. Is there not a role for the political parties on whose platform the governors or the whoever comes into office? Is there not a role for the political parties themselves? Why field someone that you cannot control, that you cannot manage, or stem his tide?
Well, you see, let me again say that we were not too fortunate to have in 1999 people who really loved this country, that took the reins of the affairs of this country as governors and other players. We were not that fortunate. What they did was to get into office, they discovered money, and therefore they became rich enough to control everyone, and therefore felt safe enough to deviate from the Constitution and do what they feel was okay for them. And then that is what we have been riding on till tomorrow. This is a fact. Let us not hide away from these facts. We are all guilty in this game.
Okay.
The followers who will refuse, yes.
Yeah. So who then should be holding them to account? You mentioned the third schedule of the Constitution. The fourth schedule is also very clear, and you are one of those people who have talked about it. Now we are talking about multi-level policing, and one of the levels of policing is the community police, which should be ideally monitoring the local government, and all of that. And the governors have done what they have done, according to many people's opinion. So who should be holding the governors to account when they execute the Constitution in breach?
Electorates, through their representatives, either at state assembly or at national assembly. That's the ideal situation. But can we, in all honesty, say that our situation is not less than ideal? I hope you have an answer to that.
Senator, just one last thing. If you say it is the representatives and the electorates, who should be holding the electorates themselves accountable? Because most of them, the information around is that most of them don't even go back to their constituencies many times.
Look, under Section 63 of our Constitution, the Constitution had made provision for recall of people who have been elected to represent the community and who, in the opinion of the community, are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. That provision is made to give the electorates the power, to monitor their representatives. But you and me know that that is not what happened. So let us, please, I am not one of those who believe, and I honestly don't believe that our problem is our Constitution. No. Our problem is the participants in the democratic process who have refused to understand the virtue of being honest enough to run the offices to which they occupy based on the oath of office they have taken. Take the oath of office alone and use it as a yardstick and put it on the face of every elected person and see whether he will pass the litmus test of what is required of him under the oath of office he has taken.
So you think the process of recall is that easy and they should do it?
It's not about whether it is easy. It is the fact that the framers of our Constitution found it expedient to insert it there, and they could not have been inserting it simply because they wanted to increase the volume of the Constitution. It's meant to be used, but politicians have made it practically impossible for the electors to do that.
So is that not a challenge? Doesn't that mean that clause is failing?
It's not failing.
If they are making it difficult for anybody to use.
It's not failing. Let me tell you. If every elected person who swore to uphold, protect, and defend that same Constitution and knew fully well that that Constitution contained that Section 63, and the people, electorates, intend to exercise the powers vested on them by that provision, and instead of helping them to do so, he would rather frustrate them from doing so because he is probably the person who nominated that person to occupy that office. So how can you say it's the Constitution? It's not the Constitution. Chamberlain, I have been sufficiently, let me say with due respect, educated on the contents and the spirit of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm one of those who have been so lucky to have someone who taught us what Constitution is all about. And after that, I did an extensive study about our constitutions and our constitutional development. So it's not something that is debatable. But you see, at times, you have to respect, again, it's a constitutional right to respect people's opinion. But I can tell you, with all sincerity, our constitution has absolutely nothing to do with the failure of governance in this country.
So you blame it on the politicians?
On the political class.
They're politicians?
I don't know. Well, they are distinct and distinguishable.
How?
Distinguished. Political class, politicians. I don't know one and the same. Like 6.5 dozen.
Who are those in the political class?
No. You see, there are no two English words or expressions that are the same. But I can tell you that the political class, ordinarily, are those people who occupy offices created by the Constitution that have the responsibility to ensure the working of that Constitution. Politicians, every person who casts his vote or who campaigns for is a politician. But the issue is, what power does he have to influence the decision of government other than voting a person into office?
No, if someone casts his vote, doesn't make him a politician.
No.
Just a citizen who's performing his civic responsibility.
Ordinarily, I said ordinarily.
Yeah, maybe. But realistically, it's not.
Well, we can argue about this here and there, and at the end of the day, the public will have the benefit of knowing who is right or who is wrong on this conversation. So,
I find it very interesting you say you've been sufficiently educated on the Constitution.
Yeah.
Have you also championed an education of many Nigerians on knowing their Constitution?
How do you do that? How is it my responsibility?
You haven't even thought about it.
How is it my It's the responsibility of people like you.
You're passing it on to the media.
Yes. The media.
So not the political class this time.
No.
All right, Senator Bala Nala is a former Deputy Minority Leader. Thank you for coming on today on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Osop. Goodbye.
What a start to a beautiful week. I know it's going to be a great one, regardless of what is happening in the economy. Have a great one. I'm Malpe Ogun Yusuf.
And let all authorities know that, as we say on the street is not smiling. Pay attention. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your week.